Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. So happy to have you all. I know I said last week was going to be the last afternoon stream, but I lied because my start date got pushed back a week. So we will be doing one more, this time for realsies. Last read along stream before I start work um, and figure out a date in the future to pick back up again. So here we are. We're on chapter 17. Previously on, we learned about Chaos exploring their mind break fetish and corruption arc for a whole bunch of boy toys so that they could be used to basically against their will become automatons for Chaos. And so 50,000 of them got kidnapped and are getting reprogrammed. And then the good guy Imperial Hunter gals have been doing operations around this besieged city that is doing pretty okay, but they're about to square up with another Titan Legion apparently, and their reinforcements for the ground troops are going to be the mind controlled soldiers, but they don't know they're mind controlled yet. So we have already set up our inevitable betrayal for our ladies because they were just too good otherwise. We also met the most like theater kid, Dark Mechanicus dude. For being a tech priest, this man is like really hamming it up every time he talks. If he had a mustache, he would twiddle it for how evil he is. Um, so yeah, that's that. We're on chapter 17. We are just over halfway through the book, BT dubs. I hope you're enjoying it. So, here we go. The Demi-Legio gathered in the shadow of Jinsu Hive's broken mountain. The hive's death had scattered debris for miles around, turning that part of the Hanjin wastes into a junkyard landscape, riven with crevasses and sinkholes where subterranean levels had caved in. The weather on Beta Garmin 3 was almost always dangerous, but a rare, clear evening revealed the sky. The atmosphere's thinness allowed the dark of space to show even while the sun still shone. A little alliteration, three S's there. Um, a blue as deep as a failing void shield in the harsh light of Beta Garmin. The devastation of Jinsu looked worse, incomprehensibly vast, a human anthill kicked by a callous god. The fires burning in Jinsu's remains would not go out for decades. Smudgy tracks of dark brown straggled upwards over the jagged peaks of the ruins. To the southwest, the diamond necklace of the Chimus Sea garlanded the horizon. White waves rushed upwards around cliffs of broken plasteel. The Demi-Legio scouted for some time to find a site suitable for the landing of the void ships. A little to the north, there was plenty of space, but no cover from the elements or the enemy. Further south, the enemy would first have to pass through the debris fields, and there in the maze of chasms and steel, Esha decided their attack would be easier to break up and halt. Once a suitable site had been discovered, the Legio stopped its pacing and waited for their reinforcements, tensely hoping the Phassadians would arrive before their enemies. As the sun rode the sky twice and neither friends nor foe came, Esha ordered the crews to sleep in rota, no more than 4 hours each, while others watched over them. In the meantime, Baravi Hanto and the Bond Knights of Procon Vi joined their mistresses, and something approached a strong force began to take shape. Esha found it hard to rest. She constantly refreshed the comms log, looking for the arrival of the Phassadian reinforcement regiment. There were worrying gaps in their capabilities. A high proportion of the fights in the cluster were pure engine-on-engine affairs. The Garminite worlds had suffered from long occupation by mankind, and their environments were often too harsh for lesser troops and machines. Her Demi-Legio was well equipped to deal with that kind of battle, but despite its deadly weather, Beta Garmin 3 allowed all manner of warriors to fight, and a Legio without infantry support was vulnerable to certain forms of attack. Sometimes infantry needed to be opposed by infantry. The sun went down. Wind blew salt-laden dust across the Titans standing in the dark. Their banners snapped. Esha's need to sleep would not be denied any longer. There was enough force in the breeze to rock the giant machines on their legs. The Sazella cockpit swayed. Domina ex Venari's soul was a vast, comforting presence. A guardian beast that would watch over Esha and protect her without question. The command throne was warm. Her head nodded. Together, Titan and Princeps slept, and Esha's dreams that night were the strange visions of machines. There was no pain like childbirth. The few women in the Legio who had undergone its ordeal came to her one by one while Esha was confined in her rooms awaiting the day. Towards the end, she found it hard to get out of the door of her mean little quarters, and certainly could not command Bestia Est. The women arrived shyly, bearing her small gifts, and then they warned her, telling her of the blood, tears, and bodily indignities with grim little smiles. They seemed to relish sharing, but not to torment, she realized almost straight away. These women had a look to them no others did. Their faces shone when they spoke of their daughter's achievements. She was surprised to hear that the few who had had boys kept themselves informed about their son's progress through the priesthood. After the third of them came to visit her, she knew for sure they were not attempting to frighten her, but were instead welcoming her into their sisterhood within a sisterhood. They were mothers, the role evolution had forced upon the female sex, and yet so few got to experience it in the Legio. She had never thought about it much, but it seemed sacred now she approached her own labor, and certain of the legends of Pacmatrice made more sense to her. Made more sense to her. The Magos Medicae, who tended to the physical well-being of the Legio crews, dispassionately laid out the procedures to be used. The gruesomeness of his descriptions was worsened by the detached tone of his vox emitter. There would be pain, ruptures, potential organ damage. Parts of her that she would rather a knife never come near might need to be cut to facilitate the birth. She could even die. "I apologize for these inconveniences," said the Magos, as dully as if the lumens in her quarters were inactive and he had no time to spare to fix them. "The human brain is among the greatest accomplishments of the machine god, a device given us so that we might improve upon it for his satisfaction and our enlightenment. But in order for us to comprehend the workings of the universe, our cognitive center has to be large. This makes childbirth dangerous for human females. It always has been and is still." "Right," Esha said. "All hail the machine god in his wisdom." Worry made her more than a little blasphemous. The Magos was too far past humanity to hear the irony in her voice, but carried on his relentless explanation. "It all serves a purpose, of course. It is a rite of passage. The pain will activate certain chemical processes within you that will bond you and make rearing the infant easier." "I will love it," she said. "Because it will hurt me?" It sounded ridiculous. His explanation probably was, but she would love it, she knew. She felt it as surely as a star warms its planets and brings forth life from the sea. The machine god decreed it to be so. "A crude and imprecise way of encapsulating the marvels of neurochemistry," said the Magos aloofly. "But if you prefer, then yes, you will." Before he left, while he was packing away his instruments back into the slots at his torso, he said, "If you wanted to be a mother, I really do not understand why you did not petition for cloning. Your combat record is exemplary. The Legio would have gladly acquiesced." "It's over, Horus Heresy Cydia. I've collected all 40,000 Warhammers." "But now we exist in the 41st millennia, Alistair Nia. I think that you have much ahead of you. Esha's hand strayed to her swollen stomach protectively. It just happened. Nothing ever just happens, Esha. The Machina Cosma does not work that way. The short conversation did not help much, and neither the other mothers nor the Magos prepared her adequately for what actually occurred. She never knew such pain. It was like no insult ever done to her body before, going beyond even the sympathetic agonies she experienced when her engine took a direct hit. All sense of deference to her superiors and those others who attended her was forgotten. She swore a lot and cursed them all. But when it was over and she held the snuffling infant in her arms, she knew for a fact the Magos was correct about something. She did love her child, unconditionally. She nuzzled the small, damp head, enchanted by the smell, part her, part the baby's father, but together a unique scent all of its own, as every human being is unique. Esha believed in the machine god absolutely, and was awed by his miracles, but never had she seen anything as miraculous as that child. They called the place she recovered in a convalescence chamber, as if there was something wrong, as if she had been ill. Men had named the place. Men were blind. But so were some women. Jahani Jahan was late to come and visit her in the Medicaid facility. So late, Esha thought she would not come. The day was over, the sun had just gone down, but there were windows high up in the room wall that were still rectangles of orange. Rhomboids slanted from them high onto the opposite wall. They were golden, warm. Jahani was by contrast cold. Her eyes glinted darkly in the shadows by the door. Esha smiled to see her friend, but something about Jahani's manner put her on guard. She hugged her child close. Instinct warned her she was suddenly afraid of her friend. It's all finished, then, said Jahani Jahan. Yes, she is. Esha moved around in her bed to show off her precious bundle, but kept her close. She did not offer the infant up to be held, as she had done for all the other women who had visited. She is to be called Abhani Lus Mohana. She looked down at Abani proudly. Granddaughter of the Great Mother herself. Jahani stayed by the door. You can't mean to keep her. Jahani's attitude was hostile. Why not? Said Esha. There was no gene contract made between me and her father. There's no bargain to be honored. She is a happy accident, and therefore she is a scion of Procon Vi and Legio Scenaria alone. Is that so? Said Jahani. Why are you being this way? Said Esha. Her friend moved closer and peered down at the sleeping child. She's the bastard of bastards, said Jahani coldly. She gestured at the curl of red hair on the baby's crown, the pale skin. She even looks like one of them. She's not one of us. Esha was hot and tired, her skin stretched with fluids and emotion. Her abdomen was slack, the muscles weakened, and her groin was a mess of stitching and fading pain. But in that moment she would have fought Jahani to the death if she threatened the child, and she would have won. Jahani Jahan made no move but stared with hatred at her child. The Imperium of Man is not concerned with the appearance of its citizens. The Mechanicum even less so, Jahani. Why aren't you happy for me? She is one of us. And to take a little screenshot of that there for all the racist 40K people out there. So they realize the Imperium is not all about British white people. There you go. Is she? I watched her father burn 50,000 innocent people for a point that did not need to be made. She is not her father. A little passion entered Jahani. How do you know she will not grow to be like him? Evil like that is carried in the genes, my sister. Dispose of it. It is the right thing to do. She looked at Apani like she was a thing. I will do nothing to her, she said. Jahani stood suddenly and backed away at a display of shame and anger. Then you have gained a daughter but lost a sister. I hope you think the price right. With those words she left, leaving their friendship discarded behind her. One day you will fight alongside this girl, and you will see that you will wrong Jahani Jahan, Esha called after. But her friend was gone, out into the dark corridor. Esha felt a stab of pain. It did not diminish how she felt for her daughter. There was no love like it. Jahani Jahan simply could not compete. Let me take some more sips of some wah-wah. Chapter 18, Neuroslaves. Mind break arc. Morning brought new light and new hope. A human hand rocked Esha's shoulder. In her dream, she had left behind womanly form and become at one with her god engine. The sensation of human fingers big enough to clasp an engine's shoulder was a striking incongruity that had her come to wakefulness with a gasp. Domina ex Venari jerked with her rousing. Yaha looked about alarmed. Domina ex Venari settled as Esha woke fully. Incoming contacts, my princeps, Yaha said, speaking formally now that they were unlinked. Landing craft, they broadcast friendly identification signals. The Facadians are here. Esha nodded her thanks and sat forward. The input jack dragged at her neck. Her mouth was foul and eyes sore. With shaking hands, she unplugged herself and stood. The Maserati seats were empty. Where are the crew? She asked. Resting as you commanded. Esha nodded again. Yaha smiled at her. This is a rough hunt. I brought you this. She handed Esha a steaming mug of sustenance broth. Esha sipped it gratefully. It tasted only marginally better than her mouth, but it warmed her. Stimulants lacing the broth stabilized her mind, and the tremors in her hands subsided. Yo, let's have some nice, delicious sustenance broth. It's good for what ails you. It's the quenchiest. Let's go and see. They passed into the atrium behind the head. Mafani Ohana and Jafenir Jahan were curled up into one corner of the floor. From the left gunnery control sounded the loud snoring of Fenina Bowl. Wake them, Esha told Yaha. The Maserati Primus set to the task with her customary gusto. Esha pulled up a cartolith onto the chart desk. Wireframes of the Legio decorated the plain black surface. The large Titans motionless, flickering. Data tags described their activity status. Half were inactive as she had ordered. She pulled the view back. The Titans shrank until they found all fit in the palm of her hand. Tiny warhounds stalked a wide perimeter. The limits of the fallen hive rose at the edges of the display, poorly represented by crudely stacked triangles. The sea was a mess of tiny geometric shapes that rose and fell. The tide had come in a long way in the night, inundating more of the hive ruins, and was now only a few miles from the Legio's position. At her command, the view went further, the Titans dwindling to points of light that merged until she had a high view that took in all the collapsed hive and the lower orbits. A fleet converged there, its escorts forming a loose screen around landing craft. A small force had broken away from the blockade bombarding Hansu Hive and was moving to intercept. Behind her, the Maserati were grumbling at being awoken. Yaha handed out more of the awful ration drink. That's not my mug, Ohana moaned. That's Jeff Fenier's. It's the Legio's mug, Yaha responded. But it's not my Legio mug, Ohana said. Esha leaned in. She set her breakfast down on the desk. Part of the mug intruded onto the projection surface, upsetting the image. This doesn't look right, she said. Princeps? Said Yaha. Look! She pointed at the arrowhead of ships coming in to attack the Fasadian reinforcements. Does that look right to you? Yaha's warm body pushed against hers as she bent down to scrutinize the cartolith. It's a small attack. Maybe they can't spare the ships from the Hansu blockade. They're coming in the wrong vector. Yaha shrugged. I'm not a void specialist. Void war is not dissimilar to engine combat. You merely have to project it into 3 dimensions. Easy for you to say, my princeps, said Yaha. You score far higher than me. That's why you're princeps and I'm a primus. Look at it, said Esha. If you were going to attack a concentration of enemy engines with an inferior force, would you come in from that direction? No, it'd be suicide, said Yaha. It's the same with this. There aren't enough ships, but what if you did not want to commit suicide? What if you had another aim with the maneuver? What would that aim be? Yaha frowned. I'd come in at that position if I weren't concerned with the obvious target, but we're aiming for something else. Yaha's eyes moved across the display, coming to rest upon the agglomerated dots that represented the Legio. Like us. Esha got up in a hurry. Everyone, back to your stations! But I haven't even used the ablutorial yet, Ohana said. Back now! Esha pulled a Voxhorn from the wall. All Titans, gauge reactors. Prepare for immediate attack. She didn't wait for the confused replies to come through, but ran for the hatch to down decks, shoving past her Maserati as they raced for their seats. She yanked upon the trapdoor, taking the furnace blast of the reactor full in the face. Omega 6, reactor to full power, immediately! She hollered. She slammed the hatch closed on his protests and went into the Cizella. Hey, Lexi, how are you doing? Yeah, it's wild. You've been sub for 5 years. Crazy. How's my favorite little dragon doing? Happy to see you, Lexi. We're just talking about our sci-fi lesbian mecha pilots here who are about to get betrayed. The eepiest dragon in all the land. School melted your little brain? Oh no! Boiled brain should not be on the menu. Gonna need a new one? Understandable. Go trade one out. Requisition a new one. Domina X Venari's reactor came online roughly. Surges of badly moderated power causing instrument lumens to flare all around the cockpit. The Maserati were shouting their way through their cross-checks, the prayers of activation giving barest acknowledgement. The snap of flicking switches rattled around the Cizella, like dice in a cup. Esha rammed her feet into the emergency command stirrups, fumbling her restraint harness closed. Esha, what is happening? Is this attack coming? Oh, is the attack coming? Durana Fall voxed. I have nothing on my scopes beside the Fasadians. The Fasadians are the attack, she shouted. She pushed the MIU interface spike home, her jaw clenching against the pain in her spinal column. Do Death Knights have permission to rob graveyards for new brains? When you're powerful enough, you don't have to ask permission from anyone. So, Dominax Venari woke badly, its soul unfurled from hidden logic engines in uncoordinated spasms. Its arms twitched. Unbidden, the Reaver took a step forward. Oh, thank you, Scarth, for the 43-month resub. Happy to see it and happy to have you. That's my favorite little jellyfish bean. Our lesbian mecha pilots are about to get betrayed, but they actually saw the betrayal coming, which was a surprise to me at least. So now they're readying all their mecha to gun down the invading forces. Damn it, she swore. The descent into Unity was a series of precipitate drops rather than a smooth submersion. Her Moderati were presences struggling for contact, the tendrils of their outreach souls reaching and failing to catch her. She was still fighting Dominax Venari when the first lance strikes slammed out of the heavens and obliterated Odicarium. Warlords, return fire! She shouted into the Vox. The rest of you move! Shells were screaming down from upper orbit, blasting craters into the wastes, sending 100-meter-high spouts of water up from the ocean, and carving new holes into the carcass of Jinsu Hive. Odicarium was a burning wreck. Half the Titans were in the same situation as Dominax Venari, their princeps battling through emergency activation to bring them into full operation. The Titans on watch were already running and therefore quicker to react. Their void shields were going up. The 12 warlords Esha had under her command were tilting upwards and firing, pacing back to find better lines of fire on their assailants. Light flashed high up somewhere beyond the atmosphere as their laser blasters and volcano cannons found one of the attacking ships. A shell exploded on Virtue of War's carapace, sending the Reaver reeling. Get your void shields up! She shouted through her own were still inactive. Theater Command! This is Esha Ani Mohana. Redirect defense laser fire to low void zone. My sector. We are under orbital attack. The Fasadians have turned! She struggled to maintain her plea for aid and fight her Titan soul into submission. Mefani, continue trying to raise them! Esha shouted. She screamed in feedback pain and hit the armrest of her throne. Damn it, Domina! There's a wide-cast denial broadcast emanating from both fleets. I'm getting no response, Mefani Ohana said. We'll have to wait for command to notice. Concentrate on getting the shields up. Esha gasped. Her rest the night before had lessened her fatigue only minimally. The struggle with her engine quickly drained what small reserves of strength she had. Dominax Venari, they're coming for us! Awake, she thought. She shut her eyes, closing out the shouts of her princeps and Moderati by force of will. She saw again the molten soul of her engine, the being she parasited, a swirling vortex of alloyed science and power. Fight, she shouted at it. Fight! The erratic noise of the reactor smoothed out. Dominax Venari peered into her being with a dumb animal's mix of love and hate. They joined. Esha's mind blended with the roaring heat of the Titan. Her senses expanded. Her reality shifted. She felt the raising of the void shields as 3 distinct shudders across her back. The Titan moved out of time with her thoughts, disorienting her. But they rapidly synchronized. Her Moderati's minds touched the machine, and through it hers. Domina X Venari was active. Power all weapons, she ordered. Demi-Legio split, maniple by maniple, weapons free. Choose targets of opportunity. Keep moving! Her maniple came to her and she stepped out, moving forwards just in time. A column of light slammed into the ground where the Titan had been standing, evaporating salt and vitrifying sand. The sky blossomed with a string of explosions. A larger detonation erupted in the middle. The bombardment ceased. Lines of fire arced from a destroyed void ship. Her warlords had struck back, but falling wreckage would soon add to their woes. The shapes of dropships were growing in the sky, pale white as daytime moons. Rains of laser fire blasted down from their undersides to clear landing zones of hostiles. While the bombardment was going, the dropships were left free as the Titans tilted backwards, straining their mechanisms to target the warships firing upon them. The combined fire output of a Demi-Legio was considerable and a genuine threat to Voidcraft in orbit. Another Void ship was hit multiple times and removed itself from the battle. It headed off, the gases pouring from its wounded sides, clearly visible from the ground. Esha could not tell if it was dying or retreating under control. It didn't matter. It was gone over the horizon and no longer her problem. She allowed her weapons Moderati to fire the guns without her direction. It was a strange sensation, like having someone else move her hands for her, but she ignored it. She had to concentrate on the tactical situation. The warships attacking them were small, destroyers, a couple of cruisers. Their purpose was to distract her Titans from the dropships, but both were threats. Come on, Vanis, she thought to herself. See what's happening here! Fire on the enemy! The dropships were spreading their formation. Rather than using the landing zone designated by the Legio Solaria, most were coming down in a wide ring, aiming to encircle the Demi-Legio and destroy it. To scatter the engines, several ships were making a perilous run to the center of their encampment. The Legio was in danger of being trapped. Esha saw that they had been tricked. As she had suggested, the wrecked scout had been bait. They were supposed to see the attack coming. Esha could not let their plan succeed in the destruction of yet another loyal Titan Legio, opening the way to Hansu Hive's vulnerable southern flank. They are attempting to surround us! Maniples spread! Scatter! Onto the hunt! Domina X Venari's war horns blared. Its sisters answered, their hooting songs defying the enemy's attempts to destroy them. The air vibrated with the descent of the dropships, stirring vertical winds in the atmosphere. The pulsing of their grav motors bounced the ground like a drumskin. Gravel danced across the hardpan. The dropships went from pale gray to dark cream, marred by metallic patches, their livery eroded by exposure to the void. An enormous troop dropship with a disembarkation port 50 meters across and an angular flight deck elevated high over it neared the ground. Void shields flared as the Legio of scattered Titans blasted at it. Stray shots pierced the Aegis, adding black scarring to the craters pocketing the hull. Fires took in the sides, but it flew undaunted. Enormous landing claws reached for the hard pan, splaying fingers as large as marshalling yards. They grasped the earth, claiming it for their own. Clustered pistons as thick through as a warhound took the ship's immense weight. More ships were coming in spiraling descents. Behind it, like scavenger birds riding thermals down to a carcass, the Titans built up to full speed, scattered before the onslaught, never still, but their movement gave only a small degree of protection from weapons designed for the high-speed intensity of Void War. A running warhound took 7 successive cannon hits, the first 2 ripping out its shielding, each impact driving it into the ground like a hammer hitting a nail. It lumbered on, knees bent, one arm coming loose, but the assault did not let up, and it crashed down, broken components scattered from its flaming wreckage. The first ship was on the ground. Its primary ramp descended, a wide, broad mouth full of warriors bearing lasguns. Thousands of men charged into the conflict. The Titans attacked as they merged, finally bringing the dropship's shields down. A wall of fire leapt up from Warhound Inferno cannons, immolating hundreds of the soldiers. The enemy ran on without fear, hurling themselves into the fire in their attempts to get to their foe. Lances of knights ran into them, cutting them by the dozen. Blades of lasfire burst from the ground. Thousands of beams of light rebounded off the knights' ion shields. They were too many to be resisted. The first night went down a moment later to a raging storm of man-portable heavy weapons fire. 10th, 6th, 9th, and 4th maniples! Concentrate fire on the second incoming dropship! Escher voxed. Warhound packs! Formed from 2nd and 9th maniples, broad sweep! Herd the infantry into the arms of House Proconvi! We must clear this area and break out! 2 more dropships were nearing the ground, while the central ships disgorged their warriors. The others continued to head to positions that would put them out of the immediate attentions of the Legio Salaria, where they could form a perimeter. From there they would tighten the noose, move in, and annihilate the Legio. More sacrifices, Abhani Luce said. Her voice had a feral edge to it as her personality was assumed by the spirit of her engine. The War Master sends the lives of his men freely. The reckless disregard for humanity is what we are fighting against, Durana Val added. Their voices were strutted by power spiking as their weapons drew on their reactors to fuel the play of destruction. The second dropship settled onto the earth and began opening its holds. Under the patina of carbon and accreted dust, the vile symbols of wicked gods were painted. They were fighting against more than recklessness, thought Escher. They were fighting madness itself. She dispatched half the knights and a single warlord to attack the enemy as they emerged. 3 maniples moved to intercept the third dropship. Its minimal laser batteries were inadequate for the task of breaking the Titan's void shield. Its aegis weakened, allowing more strikes against the armored hull, then gave out with a bang and sent a wave front of displaced air rushing outwards in all directions. The noise heralded the ship's demise. The Titans switched to their most powerful weapons, shunting power to their volcano cannons and unleashing a web of thick, white-hot beams of light. They tore into the craft, punching through multiple layers of armor, and burst from the other side. Something volatile caught in the giant ship's hold. Plates blasted from the sides as it exploded. The back broke and the ship dropped the final 100 meters to the ground, spilling burning men from its interior. The Titans turned as it fell, building up a running speed, and Princeps knowing full well what was to come. The dropship hit the ground, its fusion reactor stripped its bonds. A hemisphere of light scoured the craft from existence, the shockwave blasting men from their feet, scattering plasteel. Many soldiers did not rise, their organs pulverized by overpressure. The expanding wavefront slammed into another dropship, sending it wallowing in the air as its grav impellers broke open. Raining sparks, it slid sideways towards the ground, crash landing gracelessly. Domina X Venari stalked a desert transformed into a garden of fire. Escher scoured the field for targets while keeping a portion of her mind fixed upon the wider situation. Chunks of debris fell from the heavens, roaring with heat. Burning liquid rained through skies, crossed with smoke trails. She almost missed the whip-sharp cracks of artificial thunder generated by defense laser fire. Hansu Hive had finally seen the ploy and was firing upon the subfleet bombarding the Legio Salaria. She hoped this aid did not cost the defense of Hansu Hive too dearly. Still the bombs fell, still lances punched from low orbit, branding the ground like lit glow sticks pressed into skin. By luck rather than Escher's skill, Dominex Venari was not hit, but other Titans were not so fortunate. In the Cizella, passionless machine voices announced the names of slain god machines. Escher and Dominex Venari mourned them in tandem. The initial landing at the central point was nearing an end. The 5th and final dropship was coming down, more or less unmolested. Now the Legio was committed to destroying the troops who had already touched down. The area Escher had chosen for the landing zone was a blazing tangle of wreckage. The Phassadians were hardy, well-armored and well-equipped, but they were horrendously outmatched. They had brought in no mobile armor or large fighting machines to the makeshift landing field. Escher nervously checked over the ring of dropships settling down about the Legio. If she was to make a wager, she'd bet all she had on. There were significant armor contingents in the surrounding forces. Tanks were rarely much of a problem of a god machine. A few specialist Titan Hunter classes aside, unless deployed in significant numbers. The ships could carry enough. Dominex Venari kicked its way through a hillock of burning metal. Its guns blasted at the tiny figures running all over the desert. The Legio Solaria rallied quickly, turning their heavier guns on the surrounding dropships and raking the field with high-caliber fire. The Warhounds came into their own at the central landing zone, chasing down whole formations of troops and cutting them to pieces with Vulcan mega-bolters. Hails of mass reactives, leaving semicircular ditches full of blood carved into the desert floor. But this was not the real fight, she reminded herself. That was to come. Esha turned her head, and Dominex Venari turned its head with her. Through mechanical eyes, they looked out towards the sea. The sea was the key. Legio, cease hunt! Converge on my mark! Oh, that's somebody else talking. We're breaking through? Esha didn't catch who spoke. Her MIU data feed was overburdened with detail. Gallia, maybe? One of the princeps in 6th Maniple? We are! All engines converge on this point. Upon the Demi-Legio's cartolith, she indicated the dropship nearest the shore, and took stock of her remaining forces. 10 engines down, over 30 left, more than enough. They'd been caught by surprise, but that moment was over. We get through there, we'll be caught between their guns and the ocean, said Jahani Jahan, dissenting as usual. Our alternative is to be surrounded on all sides. The ocean will be our guard. 3rd, 6th, and 9th Maniples. Range on formation right. Prepare to turn back. Come around and... We surround them and drive them into the sea. You almost sound like you approve, Jahani, she said grimly. Legio first! Legio first! Unto the hunt! 36 Titans sounded their wrath. Time to turn the battle. Moving to maximum speed, the Titans converged. Honto rallied his banners and bade the swift knights come into an arc before the god engines. The entirety of Procon House Vi's Bond Knights were present on the field, filling Baravi Honto's heart with well-deserved pride. They ran ahead of the Titans, picking up speed, heavy stubbers and battle cannons felling the traitors wherever they were found. The knights swayed as they ran, swaggering brawlers fixed on mayhem. They sprinted through slicks of burning fuel and past piles of wreckage. Thick bonds of smoke rolled across the cracked plains, hugging the ground. Salt and grit pattered on Falcon's leg plating. The battlefield was a whirl with competing air currents, ocean wind, gusts of fire, and overpressure blasts mixing ash, smoke, salt, and sand into a concealing screen. Leading from the front, the Baron was first out of the broom. Bursting into bright sunlight, 7 dropships squatted on the horizon behind veils of heat shimmer. Smaller ships clustered around their bases. The rangefinder at his warsuit sensorium ticked down the meters as he ran. 5,000 and closing. There was no cover, just dead flat, heat-cracked salt plain, all the way to the ships. Feeble dunes banked behind them, not high enough to hide the twinkle of the ocean. His knights came quickly behind him, reforming into a mighty chevron nearly a kilometer across. Fallen in, they jogged in formation towards their foe. At 2,900 meters, the enemy opened fire. The line of black shapes flashed with muzzle discharge. Hundreds of tanks awaited the knights. "Ion shields front!" Baron Baravi Honto bellowed, as the air shifted around the line, as every energy shield was rotated to cover the front aspect of the knights. Ordinarily invisible, the fine salts in the air revealed the fields. disrupting the passage of daylight and hazing the knights behind a wave front of crackling energy. "Charge!" he screamed. His knights in their war suits answered him in the lowing battle hymns of their war horns. It was a charge from out of history's dim past, when knights had ridden horses and their war suits were simple armors of metal. Nigh on 100 Questoris pattern knights of all types thundered towards the enemy line. Their feet pounded up a shawl of fine sand that trailed behind the knightly line. Las beams blew molten trails through the dust. Shells screamed through the air on supersonic, flat trajectories. Ion shields flared as they took the hits. Their technology was different to that of the void shields carried by the Titans. More primitive, but less temperamental. Casting an adaptable screen of highly energized ions in a single direction that was solid enough to steal the momentum from projectiles or turn them aside completely. Tank shells caromed from the shields or slowed to a halt and fell to the ground. Lasfire flattened across the barriers and winked out. The space before the knight's charge became a churning storm of fire and shrapnel. Not every blast was stopped. Not everyone could be. Shots got through. Shrapnel pinged off Falcon's armor. Las beams struck, some still possessing enough power to scorch its paint. A knight exploded a score of meters along the line. It was running one moment, the next it was a column of smoke and debris, spreading fingers outwards. A leg crashed down in front of Honto. The Baron increased his speed, sending Falcon into a bone-jarring leap over the tumbling wreckage. "Lead you fast!" he screamed. "Open fire!" Battle cannons held forward like lances, belched smoke and flame. Sliding barrels recoiled into their sleeving, pumped forward again by trapped gases, preparing the guns for the next round that slammed into the breach. Missile pods spat flocks of death towards the foes. Cones of debris blasted skywards along the enemy line. Men and machine were lofted up almost playfully, as if all were involved in a game to see who could leap the highest. Honto could see the tanks clearly now, geometric shapes tall in the sand. Infantry ranged between them. Squads of heavy weapons troopers unleashed their fury. The dropships fired with their anti-personnel weapons. Ion shields sparkled and roared with explosions. The knights fired back. More of Honto's retainers went crashing down, reactors giving out with ferocious explosions. The knights' shorter-ranged weapons came into range. Avenger Gatling cannons, and Honto's own thermal cannon. He zeroed it on a Malkador battle tank and fired the gun with a thought. A shimmer of agitated air marked the passage of his thermal spear. It struck the tank's glacis, vaporizing it. The crew inside would have cooked to death before exploding ammunition blew it apart. The shrapnel slaying dozens of men around it. "Hey Thomas, welcome, welcome. We're getting into a big mecha knight fight." The knights crashed home, their chainswords swung in bloody arcs. Anti-armor weapons took their toll, bringing low the flower of House Broken Vi. Adhesive explosives lobbed at legs, blew out joints. Knights were dragged from cockpit hatches and butchered or burned alive in their war suits. Kanto strode through his foe, his mind absorbed with the task of multiple target acquisition and dispatch. It occurred to him the enemy were behaving oddly. Their fire line had been disciplined, but they reacted sluggishly to the knight's charge when it hit, neither reorganizing themselves nor fleeing as most sane men would. "Hey Zeph, welcome, welcome. Our lesbian mecha pilots just got betrayed by mind-controlled soldiers and orbital bombardment, but they reacted quickly and are now destroying the dropships that have landed and all the mind-controlled crew. Along with that, the Night Titans did basically a bayonet charge into the enemy formations and are chopping them up with their chainswords and shit." Favorite kind of mecha pilots? fucking lesbian mecha pilots. Let's go. You guys should check out Zeph. He is an incredible artist. He's done several pieces of awesome art for me, and will do many more in the future, I foresee. I thoroughly love his art. He also has this whole Katachan OC regiment that he's been drawing art of, and they're all very cool. Some of them are very dommy mommy, and we respect that about them. um, of course, Zeph. You're my bean. Gotta shout you out. Um, Honto strode through his foe. Wait, I already read that part. Okay, sorry. The triumphant wails of Titan war horns at his back distracted him from the problem. A dropship was hit multiple times, collapsing in on itself. A second was ablaze. The knights had played their role, screening the Titans as they moved in to break through. Legio first, he thought, and continued to kill. All ahead, full, into the sea, Esha ordered. The Legio was arranged in a tight block, the Titans kicking their way through the shattered center of the enemy encirclement. Ahead, the glittering poison of the Chimus Sea enticed her onwards. A portion of Honto's knights loped off, sweeping into the rising dunes for threats. The remainder held their ground, pinning open the gap through the enemy lines for the god engines. Yeah, no problem, Zeph. Feel free to lurk. The enemy were collapsing their flanks inwards, funneling men and machines towards the breakthrough point, and advancing from the rear. Their encirclement was drawing noose tight. Weapons fire slammed relentlessly into the void shields of Domina X Venari, but she would not turn the engine to fire back. She would not afford to slow the Legio by having them present weapons to the enemy and walk backwards to the water. Then they would be trapped. Elements of the Fasadian armor were abandoning their attack and accelerating towards the sea in a race with the god engines. If they arrived on the beach in any appreciable numbers before the Titans, then Esha's plan might fail. All power to locomotives, she said. In her mind's eye bared power indicators showing the weapons reactor drop away. The Titan lurched as it picked up speed. The rest moved with her. Pilam Ore of the Warlords was limping badly on a leg whose knee had locked and was falling behind as a result. Its dragging foot carved a trench in the waist. As they reached the edge of the dunes, it stopped and began to turn about. Esha voxed the princeps. Gothaniri, what are you doing? Legio first, princeps signoris, came the reply. I will delay them. The warlord swung ponderously around, guns raking the enemy forces before it had completed its turn. The rest walked on past their wounded sibling. Void shields fell. Titans took damage, some of it serious, but none debilitating. Men ran around their feet like rodents. They scurried to and fro, impotent in the face of the god machine's wrath. Dominax Venari trampled them under its feet, its point defense weaponry killing them where they presented themselves as targets. Esha swept her mighty metallic head back and forth, seeking priority targets, marking them for machine and Maserati, letting their will guide the righteous vengeance of the machine god, while she scanned on further, her huntress sensibilities bound to the light and senses of the machine. She walked in the presence of God. She was the Omnissiah's displeasure manifest. She passed over the thin line of dunes that held sea back from land. They were a pattern on the floor to her, not a real obstacle, and she stepped through them in 3 swift strides that left footprint craters meters deep. From the dunes, the land sloped a little more steeply to the water. She plunged on, beating the tank outriders to the surf. Squadrons of them were rearing up over the last sand hills, skidding down the far sides. A few turned hasty turrets towards her, flinging their ire at her majesty. With a thought, Esha swung out the Titan's left arm and obliterated them. Men floundered into the waves before her. They ran oddly, not fleeing, it appeared, but directionless, or aiming weapons that could do her no harm. They passed under the void shields as she swept by. Their las guns burned fine tracks into her skin, no more than an inconvenience than the brush of a fly's wings. They died under her feet, their passing staining the water red, but they were not afraid, and that was curious. Some fired magnetic grapnel lines up at her hips, 15 meters over their heads. She laughed a symphonic warhorn blurt at their efforts and strode over them. Other Titans followed her, the water building up around her ankles, then to their knees. Their pursuers could come no closer. The open ocean lay ahead. A sonorous alarm sounded. The first void shield was close to failure. "Turn about face!" she commanded. Domina X Venari turned around. The first void went down, causing an expanding foaming ring to form in the water's surface, and sending a shockwave of rainbow spray outwards in a perfect circle. Her sister Titans passed by her, ocular sensors taking the water in a line with quiet dignity, while a horde of insects upon the shore attempted to discomfit them. A trail of wreckage led down from the dunes and the path beaten through them by the Legio. Dominex Venari was tall enough to see clearly over the dunes, to the broken dropships on the far side. Thick black clouds of smoke rose from their ruins. The bodies of men lay everywhere, crushed into the sand, blasted to scraps by Titan weaponry. Tanks burned. They were casualties from the Legio, of course. A warhound lay face down in the dunes. A reaver rolled upon its back, trying the impossible feat of rising. The enemy were still coming. Pilamore's last field went out, and shots began to hammer into his armor. The knights splashed along the water's edge, turning to Dominex Venari's left, accelerating away from the enemy so they could come about and get around the enemy's rear. Already, 3rd, 6th, and 9th Manipul were plowing deeper into the water, beginning their own slow arc that would see them follow the knights and outflank the enemy. "Buy our flanking force time! Destroy them!" she screamed. Dominex Venari howled. Its song was picked up by the others, until every Titan in the line blared anger at their betrayers. A wall of noise that should have shattered the enemy through terror alone, but still they kept on coming. "Half speed back! Target the tanks! 3rd, 6th, and 9th Manipuls! Good hunting!" The Titans waded backwards into the sea, firing all guns as they went. The thunder of their guns was deafening, a rolling, snapping, crashing wall of sound that obliterated the roar of the ocean. The waves were wiped from existence by the return fire of the enemy and void shield displacement. Void displacement activity. Beach and water churned into dirty foam that barely had time to settle before another shell hit sent its pluming upwards. Laser blasters turned the sand into glass. Missile hits filled it with craters. Gatling blasters dug trenches with bullets the size of men's head. The air was soon so thick with spray, sand, smoke, and blood, it made a grotesque kind of fog. Dominex Venari was up to its waist in water when a new alarm rang. Esha heard it so few times she failed to recognize what it signaled. A thrill of fear from the Titan's machine spirit let her know. "Borders, Yaha! Take the strain a moment!" Aye, Esha. The crushing weight of dominating the Titan passed from Esha. Free of its presence, she sent her consciousness into the subsystems, checking little-used auger eyes arrayed in armored housings upon the Titan's surface. She caught the boarders at the back, about to breach the door. There were 5 of them, wearing fully enclosed carapace armor rigged with climbing gear. They clung to the shoulders around the access portal with magnetic pads. Some of the grapnel fire had been successful after all. They activated a fusion device and swung out of the way. Its detonation took out the watching auger along with the door. Yaha groaned with effort. She was of Princeps material, of course, but was a long way from commanding her own Titan. Esha quickly dipped back into the manifold. The Maserati Primus gave a noise of relief, blood trickling from her nose behind her helm's visor. Alarms whooped from every part of the Cizella. Snapping lasgun fire rattled around the atrium, audible even through the thick cockpit door, as emplaced lasers dropped out of the ceiling and raked the room. They were silenced. Esha could get no vid feed from the room on the other side of the Cizella door. "Weapons Moderati, report!" she voxed. The three of them voxed back quickly, stating their names. Their voices were distant. All three were deep in the manifold and ignorant of what was happening within the Titan. "Omega-6, report in!" No reply. The enemy could be battering their way into the reactor. Down there in the cramped space around the core was the realm of the Titan engine seer. He was alone, overseeing the dozen slave servitors bonded to the machine directly, whose neural architecture supplied part of the basis for the Titan's own mind. If the enemy got in there... Switching back and forth between the view of the battle and the Cizella made her head spin. On the shore, the enemy infantry had come as far as the water. The tanks stopped within the shelter of the dunes, where mounded sands would blunt the impact of god weapons. A barrage rippled along their line like a salute. Each impact weakened a void shield, nudging their efficacy down, allowing shots to pass through. When the last failed, the hail of explosives would hammer into plasteel skin. On their own, to the tank shots were insignificant blows. Together, they could slay a demigod. A clang rang from the Cizella door. A point of bright, molten light grew in the center. Intolerable heat burned Esha's back, and Dominex Venari's war horns blared in sympathetic pain. Esha slapped the restraint release on her harness, got up and drew her las pistol. The interface cable pulled painfully at her skull. She was still fully bonded via the MIU, and the interior of the cabin and the battle outside superimposed over each other sickeningly. Thank you for the lurk, Ivan. I appreciate it. She could still see well enough to shoot. A Facadian burst through the door, his face hidden behind a snout-like breathing mask. She raised her gun. The Titan lurched as it clumsily mirrored her movement. The man stumbled into the room, arms outstretched. She shot him through the heart, too late to stop the grenade bouncing down into the well where the Moderati sat. It went off with sharp crack like a firework. Metal stung her shoulder. Yaha screamed, and Mafani slumped over her smoking console. Fire caught in her deck, setting her body afire. Esha had no time to attend to the unfolding disaster. There was a second man behind the first. He wore no mask. His face was ghastly pale, showing the expression of a man undergoing a palsy. His muscles twitched. He drooled. His eyes rolled. He raised his gun stiffly as if he were fighting his own movements. I can't, he said. The gun shook. My name is Eaton Bach. I'm loyal to the Emperor. Esha moved to the side. The Titan moved with her, nearly falling off balance, its stabilizers working at full capacity. Bach stumbled sideways into the door jamb, sending his shot wide. The lasbolt hit Esha in the shoulder. Her arm went dead and her gun fell from her hand. She cried out and Dominex Venari screamed with her. Bach grunted with effort, trying to keep the gun down. She saw now that a blood-crusted device was clamped to his forehead. A single red point of light glimmered malevolently on its own. No! My name is Eden Bach! I'm loyal to the Emperor! The gun pointed at her head. Esha stared at him. I'm sorry, he said. Bach cried out and lifted into the air. The point of a mechadendrite emerged from his chest. He blinked in surprise and dropped to the floor, revealing Omega-6 in the doorway. Narrow slaves, said the tech priest. Diabolical technologies. The dark mechanicum throws all morality into the smelter in their rush for knowledge. They will damn us all. His bloodied appendage whisked back beneath his robes, and he towed the body with an armored foot. This poor soul betrayed no one. Fire suppressant gushed from an extinguisher. Jafenir Jahan doused the body of her comrade. The smell of burnt meat and chemicals choked them all. Omega-6's hood rustled as he looked up at Esha. Can you fight, princeps? Esha probed the cauterized wound in her shoulder. She winced. She could not move her arm, but she did not need to. She nodded. Moderati Primus? Asked Omega-6. Yaha made a grunt that carried more affirmation than pain. Then I shall be back in my chamber. This battle is not over! He went away towards the rear of the atrium. Bright light reflected from the surface of the Chimus Sea blazed through the shattered doorway into the Cizella. Wincing, Esha lowered herself back into the chair. "Let us finish this," she said. The manifold rushed up to engulf her, taking away the greater part of her pain, and the battle outside refocused in her mind, once more supplanting the cockpit's view. More of the enemy were forming up. There were 3 lines of tanks now, bombarding the Legio. Their tactics were suicidal and made no sense. She understood why. The finesse of control granted by the neuro units was probably not great. The enemy were dying in droves, but it was a battle of mutual annihilation. Another 2 engines had fallen, their overheating reactors boiling the sea into scalding mists. War horns blared on the far side of the gun line. Giant shapes swaggered out of the murk of battle. 7 war engines from 3rd, 6th, and 9th manifolds. 2 warhounds emerged first, inferno guns scouring the dunes clear with giant plumes of flame. From the far end of the enemy battle line, lesser war horns sang. The remaining knights of House Prokenvi attacked the enemy from the left, rolling up the flank. "Open fire!" Esha screamed. The Titans in the sea aimed everything at the Phassadian center. Trapped between the 2 halves of the Demi-Legio, the enemy were annihilated, their broken remnants driven into the sea. Not one of the enslaved Phassadians survived, but as Esha reflected later, in slaughtering their own people, they had done the enemy's work for them. No attack came from the Hanjin wastes after all, but there would be no reinforcements either. Look at that little... Reaver Titans look so silly. I think it's the head most of all, because like Warlord Titans have their big like knight helmet shaped heads, but Reavers have that goofy ass little skull helmet, and I just think it makes them look silly. But that is a picture of Domina X Venari. One moment. Just hydrating. Wow! A single way out. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. We just got to chapter 19 of our book. Oh, thank you for the bits. Happy to have you. This isn't a what's it called? An audiobook. It's just a read along. So if you have any questions as I read, just let me know, and I will answer them. But we now have arrived at chapter 19. The Emperor's Sons. Upon the fringes of the Beta Garmin system, the veil between the worlds parted, and a fleet of incomparable size sailed free of the madness behind the world. Ships came in such number they blocked the light of the stars. Battle barges, cruisers, battleships, carriers, troop ships by the hundred. On and on they came, a gathering of might that had emptied the crowded orbits of Terra, as at their head flew the Red Tear, or it's the Red Tier, sorry. The Primarch Sanguinius's command vessel, an immense Gloriana-class battleship of rare make. Oh, thank you, Single Way Out. I'm glad you like my reading voice. Its form was unique and far divergent from its sisters, being cleverly remade to resemble the winged blood drop badge of the 9th Legion. Sanguinius ordered the oculus shutters opened before the last of the warp's unclean energies had bled off, so the crew of the Red Tier were forced to hold up their hands to their eyes to shield them against the otherworldly fires streaming off the flagship's prow. Sanguinius stared into them as intently as an oracle reading the patterns of less uncanny flames. What he scried within them, he told no one, but took a stern expression upon his face, sat back in his throne, and spoke. So, this is what Rogel's musters bequeathed us. The curls of the warp's embrace flickered to nothing, giving clear view of a boiling sea of incandescent gas. No enemy awaited them. A signal from First Captain Raldoran saw 500 warriors in red relax their weapons from firing positions around the edges of the command deck. Their movement was a sudden clatter, loud in the quiet of diligent men and women at work, then as suddenly gone. The Space Marines became still as statues, only the quiet hum of their battleplate reactors hinting at their living nature. Beside Sanguinius' throne was a second seat, also made for a Primarch's stature, but Jagatai Khan, for whom it had been installed, did not sit in it. The Lord of the Ordu had no use for thrones. He was poised forever on the edge of action, like his hawk namesake, ready to abandon the station in the sky and plunge down, talons outstretched, into bloody conflict. "The Garmin Nebula is born anew," the Khan said. He folded his arms like his brother. He was fully armored. Many places in the cluster that had been pure black now glowed with the embers of war. The Khan did not misspeak. It was as if the cloud of gas that had birthed the cluster had returned. "How many ships must have died to provide us this display?" Sanguinius said. "We sail into a sea of fire." The Khan's eyes moved across the view, unerringly seeking out each of the cluster's major systems. He was so far-sighted and so calm, one could believe he saw onto the surfaces of those distant worlds and found no challenge there. "Thousands," said Jagatai. "More." He looked to his brother. "This is as bad as we feared." "Worse," said Sanguinius. He was pensive. Where Jagatai seemed to look into every cranny of reality, Sanguinius stared beyond in a darkness mortal men could not apprehend. The great angel had changed, as had all the Emperor's loyal sons, but the pain of treachery laid more heavily on Sanguinius than it did the others. One gold-clad hand clenched his thrown arm, the other moved up to his chin. His wings twitched, rattling the ornaments adorning them. "We expected to fight our way through," said Khan. "Where is the enemy?" "I believe we are late," said Sanguinius. "Time check." He called down on an instrument pit built into the floor. "The voyage was peaceable," said the Khan, continuing their conversation as the crew rushed to fulfill Sanguinius's request. "The warp is still in turmoil. The storm may be over, but the powers within work against us." An unmodified human in a Blood Angel's fleet uniform presented the Primarch with a scrap of paper. "We are late," said Sanguinius. He handed the note to his brother. "Weeks late. Open all Vox frequencies," he called to his crew. "Send out messages via every means to all loyal factions. Inform them of my presence." "Keep me out of it, brother," said Jagatai. "Our plan should remain as we agreed." "As we discussed," said Sanguinius. "Let your announcement be the roaring of your guns and engines. I shall be the hammer blow, you the striking dagger. Do you know where you shall go first?" "I have a few ideas," said Jagatai. "I find it best not to tie myself to plans. To the likes of Dorn, plans are the walls of a fortress. To me, they are the bars of the cage. I go where the wind blows me." "You are the wind, Jagatai. The hurricane, the tornado," said Sanguinius. "Sometimes I am when the opportunity permits," said the Khan. "Move fast, strike hard, improvise, but no hurricane, no matter how hard it gusts, can blow out the fire we see here." Sanguinius nodded. The light from the burning clouds ahead lit his face in fiery orange and turned his wings golden. "If only we could." He looked to his brother. "That is not our purpose. If we can stop Horus, we shall. But having seen the void itself aflame, I say Dawn's assessments were correct. The matter will not be settled at Beta Garmin. We bleed him. We break his forces. We steal as much of his might and his impetus as we can. Then we depart to rejoin Rogel. The Khan inclined his head in acknowledgement. I thank you for your company during this voyage. He paused. I have been a little too eager to retain my independence. It has been a pleasure to spend some more time with you. He looked at his brother with proud eyes. There was a yearning to be away in them, but he spoke sincerely. Sanguinius bowed his head. My hospitality is ever at your disposal, brother. And mine at yours, said the Khan. I will ready my legion. I will inform you of my first target decisions before we depart. After that, you shall know all of my deeds by the cries of our enemies. As it should be. No doubt we shall not meet again until we stand shoulder to shoulder upon the walls of the palace. Sanguinius stood from his throne. Jewels tinkled all over his armor and wings. He embraced his brother and rested his cheek against the Khan's. Make sure you return, my brother. His words were a sorrowful whisper to in the other's ear. There are too few of us to stand against him. If we are both lost here, we doom our father. Nothing shall stop me. That I wholeheartedly believe. You will also be there, said the Khan. Sanguinius's beautiful eyes closed against a private pain. We shall see. They parted. The Khan grinned. You will be there, the great angel, stood against the coming dark. He gestured at the burning world. This sally is but an appetizer. The feast of war awaits us on Terra, and you will have a place at the table. It can be no other way. We must trust that it is so. Sanguinius's smile could not hide his sorrow. Until next time. The Khan laid his hand on his brother's shoulder. Their gazes locked. Do not do anything rash. I shall try not to. The Khan nodded and walked away. The sanguinary guards stationed by the main access portal to the command deck flashed their weapons in salute as he departed. Sanguinius sat back upon his throne. Ralgeron, he said, calling his first captain to him. Oversee the gathering of intelligence. Present it to me as it comes in. For many hours, Sanguinius remained on the command deck as the fleet hung stationary in the void. At first, there was no response from the beleaguered worlds, and Sanguinius was left to brood. His visions of death had not left him, and although he had come to terms with what must happen, in fact, he did not know when or where his death would befall him, tore at him. The War Master could be speeding towards his fleet at that very moment. He might have only hours to live. He could have months, but he was going to die. That much was sure. There remained the possibility that he rushed too fast for this confrontation. Knowing the future made it harder to deal with. Was he in fact responsible for his own death? Were the visions he suffered of his bloody corpse and Horus's triumphant face the result of his own impetuous need to see out the prophecy? He was numbed by the paradox. Act, don't act, the decision tormented him. Despite his resolve to see past the hard trammels of fate and forge his own destiny, his experiences on Davin had removed most of his doubts, but intensified others. He thought of his wayward brother, the Night Haunter, whom he had cast adrift in space. I think, thought Sanguinius, that I understand you now, comrade. You go to your fate, and I go to mine. The red tear knew his pain. Like him, it had been deeply hurt, and like him, it had yet to be fully restored. Gilliman's shipwrights had done their best during the heretical days of Imperium Secundus, but much good work had been undone again by the Veritas Ferrum, the demon ship sent to bar them from Davin. He felt its aches as his own, Both appeared hale on the surface. Both were wounded in the heart. A deep gloom descended over the Primarch, in which he was lost for some time. Staring out of the oculus at the sea of fire, in his mind he saw Horus's face, bloated beyond recognition by the dark powers. He saw the swing of his maul. He saw his own death, and again he remembered the price his sons would pay, the twin curses unleashed by his demise. If there was any viable alternative, he would take it. But on offer were only two differing sorts of damnation. The sense of purpose he had found on Davin was fragile. Like a fire, it required tending. Its fuel was faith, and Sanguinius found his faith wanting.
My lord,
Raldoran's words penetrated Sanguinius's thoughts, but did not rouse him. He heard them as an echo of a memory, something caught just on the edge of hearing as the maul descended again.
My lord Sanguinius.
The first captain's hand rested on a golden forearm of his lord, small as a child attempting to comfort his father. Sanguinius came abruptly alert at the contact, making Raldoran take a wary step back. The great angel looked about himself in confusion, unsure of where he was. His face cleared.
Raldoran,
the captain saluted.
The first communication has arrived.
He held out a plastic flimsy, printed with hard black words. Sanguinius took it. He scanned the marks of purity and relayed details. It had come from the command center of Alpha Garmin, passed through the great Carthaga Telepathica, the giant temple relay on Beta Garmin 2. He glanced up. Is this all it says?
Besides the detail, yes,
Raldoran said. Sanguinius returned his eyes to the single line of text, translated from a psyker's dream. Below it were columns of information of military strength and current strategic circumstance, but the personal message held his attention. Sanguinius read it aloud. Thank the Emperor. Then communications from all over Beta Garmin began to arrive. The astropathic messages trickled in slowly in ones and twos at first. When a few more hours had passed, they began a flood. A picture was pieced together quickly from the flow of information. A large tactical cartolith was ignited, and as each scrap of data was processed, more of the situation in Beta Garmin was filled in. Dorn's great muster had not proceeded to plan. A lack of coordination was apparent right across the war zone. Within the first day, several commanders presented themselves as being in overall command, 3 of them openly denouncing the claims of the others. So many different armies, ranging in size from ragged bands of survivors to entire battle groups, had arrived in the cluster from all over the Imperium that it would tax even Sanguinius to organize. Dozens of worlds, millions of men, scores of Titan legios, he said, going over the latest batch of communiques, all arriving from different directions, under different commanders and at different times.
Too much of it being fed piecemeal into the grinder,
said Raldoran, gesturing at the hololith.
There is effectively no organization here. Why are these Titan legios throwing themselves into battle alone? Why do they not fight together?
They are proud and independent, said Sanguinius, even of the Forge worlds they protect. The reorganization of the Mechanicum is further compounding the problem.
It is madness. They are discarding our opportunity for victory.
Sanguinius looked at his Gene son. In similar circumstances, we would be no different. Sanguinius set the data slate aside. What can we expect? The ripples from the ruin storm yet perturb communications and transit. This is the great war of our epoch. More than guns endanger us. The so-called gods themselves work against our every effort.
This is not Cygnus Prime, countered Raldoran. There is no mention of demons in the messages. The materium is free of never-born taint.
It is not Cygnus Prime, said Sanguinius, nor is it the madness of Davin, or the insanity of the Veritas Ferrum. But demons and poisoned reality are not the only tools of our foes. There are many assets here that were once the Emperor's to command. We are opposed by the great entities of the Warp,
No war will ever be simple again. There can be no victory here, only the forestalling of defeat. Even so, said Raldoran, we have the Carthaga. It should be a tool for command, but instead it is used for the listing of the slain. The tally of the dead grows louder by the hour. What purpose does it serve to mourn the dead when the living still die? With no one to issue commands, it is unsurprising it is put to this use. It is a cry of pain, of terror, which I have answered. He stood. Raldoran, pull together my captains and my chapter masters. We have enough information to construct a plan of war. We meet in the Prime Strategium within the hour. Make it so now. My lord, Raldoran bowed. Sanguinius raised his voice to address the command deck crew. The rest of you here continue your spying. Bring me everything there is to know about the cluster. I do not expect my brother to show himself to me without effort on our part, but I will face him. Seek him out, find me the vengeful spirit, find me the war master, so that we might bring him to heel. The crew redoubled their efforts. Servitors ground out mechanical affirmations of orders received. As Sanguinius noted their diligence with satisfaction, fresh light showed in the void. He looked out to see the White Scar's vessels pulling away from the greater armada alone. That was their way, to hunt and fight without support, striking with no warning. The great ships seemed to move slowly, but they were accelerating all the while. And soon they were only bright points amid the universe's display of cosmic baubles. Then the void shivered, and the White Scar slipped into the warp, and their lights were gone. Good hunting, brother, said Sanguinius. Messages came through from the Khan and were brought to his attention. Sanguinius waved them away. He did not need informing of Jagatai's first target. If he knew his enigmatic brother at all, it would be a worthy strike. He sat and became thoughtful again as he waited the gathering of his legion. A black humor settled deep into his bones. For the first time since his struggles at Cygnus Prime, he was truly alone. Chapter 20. Disaster at Theta Garmin. Spicy! We had 2 primarchs show up. I'm glad to see that the primarchs are finally arriving to try and organize this mess a bit. I hope you guys liked my Khan and Sanguinius voices. I didn't want to give Khan a really racist Asian accent, so I felt like giving him more of like a Russian-y kind of accent would be kind of a compromise. I felt like Sanguinius, being this big, beautiful femboy angel man, would probably have a more like lighter, soothing voice. Disaster at Theta Garmin. Nuntio Dolores prowled across a metal plain larger than a continent. 103-4 was a gargantuan assembly plant where sub-assemblies were brought together and made into void ships. An artificial construct that size was massy enough to generate its own gravity field. Areas of higher density boasted a natural pull close to a third of Terra. Where the plate thinned or was hollow with vast dry docks or construction halls, it tailed to nothing. Gravitic topography was complicated by the varying supply of artificial pull to different parts. Gravity lenses formed in places where multiple inhabited decks were stacked atop each other, the effects of their grab plating magnifying each other. Conversely, where the orbital plate had taken heavy damage and power was lacking, there was precious little pull. The effect for a Titan was akin to negotiating a treacherous mudflat, where one wrong step could see a man sucked into deep quicksand, or plunged over his head into water. Hertek kept a gravity map front and center of his MIU interface, using that more than the visual cues the landscape had to offer to plot his course. No ship had been made at 103-4 for 3 years. It had suffered extensively. Giant craters surrounded by petals of blackened metal, healed up by internal explosions, scarred the surface.
Huge sudden holes, steep and straight-sided as wells, opened without warning in front of him, the result of lance hits. Other starship weapons had carved their own unique signature into the body of the orbital, overlaid by the lesser marks of Titan weaponry. The 103-4's sheer size made it a prize worth fighting over. It was a stable island in the dark, which offered control over numerous attendant satellite realms. The Gardaman hub rotated 20,000 kilometers away. Its details model fine. Iridium was a toy moon decorated with brutal industrial adornment. Dozens of other orbitals swarmed around 103-4, near and far, damaged and whole. 103-4 was the ruined capital of a rich kingdom, and so the Legio Volpa went to war over it again. One moment. Yep. 4 days ago, thousands of Imperial ships had burst from the warp and made directly for Theta Garmin 5. Accompanying them were the god machines of Legio Ataris, the Firebrands. Unlike the Imperial hunters they replaced, the Legio Ataris were a confrontational legio, closer in character to the Legio Volpa. Even their colors were similar, being red, black, and gold. The balance of their engines was of middling classes, Reavers, Night Gaunts, and Carnivores, but the aggressive manner in which they deployed them made up for the relative paucity of heavier machines. Heretic looked forward to facing them again. War raged in a blazing storm all around Theta Garmin 5. The Legio Solaria might not have achieved much directly, but the Iridium Moon was the gap in which the prybar of Legio Ataris was inserted. The Loyalist forces rapidly reinforced their holdings there and began immediate operations to retake Theta Garmin 5. All over the sprawling void yards, the titans of Legios Furians, Ataris, and Volpa were embroiled in deadly battle, while the endless black of the void was turned white by the fury of starships. 5 maniples of the Deathstalkers defended 103-4. They marched across the central portions of its hugeness in a loose crescent, 25 kilometers across, towards the drop zone of Legio Ataris. There were hundreds of titans present in the battlesphere, but its sheer size meant they were thinly spread. The traitors were at a disadvantage, forced to defend everywhere, while the loyalists could pick the field of their choosing, safer under the protection of their superior fleet. All right, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for hanging out. Have a good time hanging with your bros. Heretic watched dozens of contacts coming in fast under heavy void ship escort. Coffin and dropships detached from Titan conveyors and came speedily down to the surface. In the maps projected in his mind's eye, the contacts split, new dots budding from the originals like bacilli growing from their parents' cells. They've brought their entire legio with them, he thought out to his fellow princeps. Ataris are weaklings, Secundus grating. I count no more than 50 of their engines, mostly medium weight classes. Venadir Anatek, Princeps Majoris of Manifold 4, thought back to him, via the machine telepathy of the Manifold. We boast 15 warlords. They only have 8. They outnumber us 2 to 1, said Benef Durant. His tone conveyed with a blazing lack of subtlety by the infosphere link made Heretic grin. Never count anything with fewer guns than your own engine, boy, Antec thought back. And if they're all in one place, then they might be destroyed in one fell swoop. The new Mechanicum promises victory. The Firebrand shall regret this little foray against the Deathstalkers. The minds of all connected swelled with pride. In the conjoined mentalities of the crew and machine spirits of each individual Titan, the pride was strongest, but it bled out along the slender links binding machines into maniples and maniples into Demi-Legio, momentarily uniting them into something bigger than man or machine. They were Legio. Heretic checked the mission timer. It ran backwards towards the Mechanicum's surprise and the promise of victory. Artem Protoss Mechanicum acolytes assured the Ataris would fall. Volpa's concentration upon 103-4 was the bait to the trap. Elsewhere, a similar ploy was being taken by Legio Furians, middling strength concentrations of Titans to lure out the full force of their enemies. This better work, Heretic thought. We have too many engines held in reserve to win by honest means.
All manifolds halt!
The order came from Faedun Baven of Maniple 9, voted seniorus for the engagement. Heretic bristled still at Baven's election. The others had snubbed him after the Legio Solari assault. They thought him a coward for not attacking during the last battle. Even when Maniple 18's idiotic ambush had cost them 2 of its engines, he was in poor humor. His head ached and Nuntio Dolores was being difficult, relying on the schemes of Tech Priest to save them from Bavin's lack of tactical subtlety poisoned his mood further.
We have reached the outer perimeters of our ground defenses, Bavin went on. Any further from here, we shall be easy prey to their void shields.
Heretic brought his maniple to a halt and a little ahead of the others in the shadow of a tower 5,000 stories tall. Blackened holes riddled its sides, big enough that the Void War could be viewed on the other side. Surface turrets panned endlessly back and forth, their servitor control systems locked in a permanent seek and destroy pattern. They were only small anti-munition and anti-fighter positions. The void ship killers were several kilometers back, clustered in groups around the deep shafts of power exchangers, where they could tap directly into the reactors deep within the structure. Such weapons could hit any target around the orbital plane. The lack of defensive coverage at the Legio's current position was more about the ability of multiple batteries to work together than a question of range. Past Heretic's location, the station was dead. Its power relays smashed, hulls open, and weapons inactive. Beyond the points of good functionality, the certainty of swift ship kills diminished, and the chances of God engine loss to the guns of the enemy navy increased. This was why Atreus was setting down there. Titan eyes scanned the horizon. Despite 103-4's vastness and the horizon was near, hard against the black, a cliff edge that ended in nothingness. Legio Ataris appeared in a line of winking dots without atmosphere to refract light. They were as sharply defined as if they were 100 meters away. So much so they seemed like miniature representations of themselves. The void robbed distance of its power, broke the laws of perspective, and made the immense tiny. Legio Ataris, lead elements, 30,000 meters enclosing, reported Heretic's Moderati Censorius. Well within effective range, thought Heretic. Nuntio Dolores' mighty soul grumbled in agreement. Too much, in fact. Heretic felt the volcano cannon ready to fire at the machine's own behest, and he was forced to exert his will to stop it. A few seconds later, the line of advancing God engines sparkled. Fiery darts arced from their backs, leveled off and descended towards the Legio Vulpa. The missiles were lost in a blazing storm of ship-on-ship battles raging in the void all around the planet. The defense turrets around Maniple 7's position saw the missiles before Heretic caught sight of them again, angled upwards and opened fire. Nuntio Dolores' subsystems peeped out small warnings. Explosions erupted half a kilometer out all along Legio Vulpa's line as the missiles were hit and destroyed. Several got through, slamming into the shielded bodies of the Deathstalkers. The warlord Benediction of Blood took 4 direct hits, its void shield blurring, sparkling, and collapsing one after the other, leaving naked of its protection.
First volley of them, no effect. Return fire now, commanded Bavin.
Those Titans so equipped opened up with their carapace-mounted missile batteries. Apocalypse launchers spat out rapid volleys. Nuntio Dolores shifted jealously in the airless void. The exhaust fires of the projectiles glared brightly, flaring in the Titans' auto senses and cutting down visibility for the fraction of a second that they climbed up and away from their firers. More than half of the Demi-Legio's warlords present had laser blasters rather than missile pods, Nuntio Dolores included. Giant servo motors sang through the hull as the twin guns angled forward, locking into targets ordained by Bavin. Heretic thought little of the Princeps Senioris firing solutions, and from the sensation given out by Nuntio Dolores' machine spirit, the Titan didn't rate them either. But Heretic followed them as commanded, thought ordering his weapons Moderati to lock onto a night gaunt struttering across the metal plains. Heretic upped Nuntio Dolores' magnification, bringing the smaller Titan racing towards him as if he himself flew over the orbital shell. The view jumped a little, and it took longer than it should to bring it back into focus. The machine moved around points of gravitic instability with a surety that crossed the line into arrogance. The banners rippled oddly in the vacuum, sent into shivering, regular waves solely by the Titan's movement. White and black bars covered its greaves, badges proclaiming loyalty to the throne of Terra, and the exiles of Mars covered its heraldry plates. It deserves to die simply for that, thought Heretic. More missiles flew silently from the backs of Legio Ataris. They crossed paths with those of Legio Vulpas and descended. Shield flare glimmered across the Ataris front, encasing the god machines in glittering ovoids.
Enemy shields remain intact. Legio Vulpa, hold fire, commanded Bavin.
Because your firing solutions are worthless, thought Heretic. Echoes of his dissatisfaction passed into Nuntio Dolores and became waves that rippled out across the Demi-Legio. Legio Ataris Principe, or Princeps Signoris, was evidently of higher quality than Bavin. Rather than spread among all Titans, Ataris's missiles continued the relentless homing in on a handful of machines. Though protected by the orbital's point defenses, enough of the missiles got through to give concern, rocking the shieldless benediction of blood and bringing down the voids on one of the Reavers. Titans moved quickly. They appear ponderous, their strides as slow as the turning of the day, but like the speed of the sun through the sky, their slowness is an illusion. Pushing their reactors hard, Ataris' Titans neared quickly despite the dangerous terrain.
Damn it, Bavin! Adopt concentrated firing patterns! They'll all get here if you continue this pointless split barrage!
Heretic lost his temper and shouted over the Vox. He regretted his outburst instantly when Nuntio Dolores' spirit rebuked him with a wordless jolt of pain.
Remain calm, Bavin replied via the Legio infosphere. The Vox's weakness, the soul of the machine is all. Stay bonded or lose our respect. You were not voted Signoris today. I was. Therefore you shall obey me. Hold fire until I deem fit.
Range 15,000 kilometers in closing, Heretic's Moderati Censorius reported, prompted, no doubt, by Nuntio Dolores' own frustration at the lack of activity.
Stand,
Heretic thought pulse to his crew. Although he was not concerned with them, he could feel the Titan's eagerness to engage. Its soul tensed under his mind like it was about to bolt. Bavin's flesh-firing plan cascaded through the infosphere. Heretic dismissed it.
Volcano cannon, target Nightgaunt, war rot, left arm, he said.
His crew hesitated.
But my lord, Princeps Signoris Bavin.
Heretic's rage at his weapon's Moderati lashed through the manifold like a whip. He felt the man's mind buckle under his fury.
I am the Princeps of Manipul 7, he shouted unto the Cizella. This is my domain. You will do as I say. Target volcano cannon as commanded.
He slipped back into the manifold.
Aim laser blasters to this point. My command. Make him dance to our tune.
Heretic highlighted a section of the station's skin where a dip at his gravity map suggested a large void close to the surface. The data passed into the minds of his crew and Titan as if there were no barrier between their souls. Power built in Nuntio Dolores' weapons feeds. Heretic felt it as a rising of pressure along his arms and back. Together he and the Titan trembled in anticipation of release.
Open fire,
Bavin commanded. Legio Vulpa let fly with every weapon they possessed. Bavin utilized a standard Titan vs. Titan fire pattern, matching larger engines against weaker in an attempt to wear down void shields across the front and bring down large portions of the enemy simultaneously. It was a tactic Heretic disapproved of greatly. His preference was for certain engine kills that eroded the enemy forces gradually but certainly, the same tactic that the Legio Ataris was currently employing. The effect of Bavin's plan was admittedly spectacular, A wall of fire and energy flare leapt up along the leading edge of a terrace's advance. Void shields gave out in dazzling displays of discharge. One of Aterra's titans stopped dead, its head destroyed by a lucky hit. In response, scything volcano cannon beams amputated the arm of Benediction of Blood. Fire volcano cannon, Heretic commanded. Nuntio Dolores' reactor pulsed hotly. Heretic's eyes slid closed with pleasure. A searing beam ripped out from the volcano cannon, slamming into the left of the Night Gaunt. Its voids rippled but held. Predictably, the Night Gaunt swung to his right to throw off Nuntio Dolores' aim, just as Heretic anticipated. Laser blasters, open fire. The warlord leaned forwards, aiming its carapace weapons at the ground in the Night Gaunt's path. The gestalt of Titan and crew released the building power of the guns at precisely the right moment, smashing open the hull of the orbital as the lighter Titan was raising its foot. It had no time to react. The crew probably didn't even see the pitfall until it was too late. The foot descended into a gaping hole, and the Titan crashed down hard. Void shields glared with power overdraw. Sections of metal around the cavity exploded into sparks as their matter was displaced into the materium, widening the hole further until it was big enough to swallow the Titan completely. The last of its shields burst, leaving the edges glowing like the embers of burned paper. The head slammed into the lip of the chasm, snapping it back into the carapace. A botched ejection sent it skidding across the surface of 1034, while its body, limbs limp, fell into oblivion. Engine kill, engine kill, engine kill. A servitor bonded to the wall spoke the words over and over again. This is the way to victory, he thought out to the Legio. First kill to Nuntio Dolores. Again. Volpa had the advantage for the moment, sheltered, given extra protection by the defense turrets, and able to better aim their weapons. That would not last. As soon as the lines drew nearer, being stationary would become a disadvantage. Bavin saw this and issued an order to withdraw. The Legio fell back as one group, still hammering the lines at the advancing Legio Ataris. One of the foes stumbled when its foot passed over a habitation section where the gravity plates were still in line, leaving it wide open to enfilading fire. To Heretic's annoyance, Bavin did not order a retargeting, and the machine recovered for the loss of one paltry void shield. Alarms were suddenly ringing everywhere. Servitors moaned in their alcoves. Debris storm, debris storm, debris storm, they mumbled. Heretic forced Nuntio Dolores' sensorium wide. At the far edge of his detection range, a tumbling mass of ruined metal was hurtling towards them. Closing fast, the first elements were coming in, already too fast to see, punching neat round holes in the surface of the orbital. The approach of the artificial meteor swarm had been masked by the Void War. It was one of thousands picked up by the grinding siege of Theta Garmin 5. Broken orbitals and dead ship pieces whirling around the gas giant at hundreds of thousands of kilometers an hour. They came raining in with murderous force, smashing up more debris to add to their swarm as they battered the orbital. Void shields on both sides pulsed with high energy impact splash patterns. Alright, we're just at about 2 hours of our stream, and I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up here. I don't know, obviously, how much longer the chapter is or anything, so I think cut it off here. We can pick up next time as this battle inevitably goes terribly wrong for Legio Volpa, as we love to see. I think it'd be really fun. Whew. One moment. All right. Yeah, I hope everybody had fun today. I hope you enjoyed this, the last of our, it's readjusting to the switching of screens. But hopefully you could hear me clearly. But, yeah, I hope everyone had fun. This will be the last of our, read-along streams, for the foreseeable, or at least, well, it's the last of the afternoon read-along streams. I will say that much. In 2 weeks, we might do an evening read along stream while my partner Yuko is out of town. So we'll see about that in 2 weeks. But this will be the last of the afternoon streams. If you didn't know, all of these episodes are all up on my YouTube. So you can, if you are new to the channel, you can go catch up on them there. You can also see all of my other content. If you haven't done so already, please give me a follow here on Twitch. You can sub over to me on YouTube where you get the previous 5 episodes as well as all the VODs of basically every stream I've ever done over the last 5 years, including my D&D campaigns, if you want to see that. You could also follow my Blue Sky and see my art and unhinged thoughts about things like Nakatashi the animation. And you can join my Discord, the Eternal Citadel, and be a part of my incredible community. I want you all to know you're all beautiful, amazing, and valid people, and I hope you enjoyed spending your day with me nearly as much as I enjoyed spending it with you. And never forget the most important part, which is that the world is better having you in it. That'll be it for this week. We will potentially be reconvening next week for another Monday night for another session of my ongoing D&D campaign, Nexus Forlorn Legacy. So I'll be posting more about that in the coming days. But I think without anything else, let's get that raid rolling. So if you are a follower, please copy down the call to hugs message. If you are a sub, please copy down the Knights message. One of my friends, a certified good bean and busty dragon girl, Azura, is currently playing my favorite game, Fallout New Vegas. So we are going to be rating her and sending some love. Let's go send her some love. Ba-da-da-da. All right, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day and an amazing afternoon. Bye.